Ang Philippine Air Force military pilots ay natatangi sa lahat. Mga miyembro ng Sandatahang Lakas ng Pilipinas na hinubog upang maging matatag, alisto at bihasa sa mga misyong panghimpapawid. Hindi madali ang mga pagdadaan ng pagsasanay ng mga aviation students. Ngunit lahat ng ito ay upang makamit ang Military Aviator Badge. Tanging matitibay, matitikas, at malalakas ng mga student aviators lamang na matitira ang siyang tatanghalin bilang ganap na Philippine Air Force military pilots.
The mission of the Philippine Air Force Flying School is to train officers to become a pilot of the Philippine Air Force. But since most of the aviation students were newly graduate of the Philippine Military Academy in the Philippine Air Force Officer Candidate School, their school is also responsible in refining the characters of these students to meet the standard of the Philippine Air Force, not only in becoming a pilot, but also in becoming future leaders of the armed forces of the Philippines. The Philippine Air Force Flying School traces its roots when the Philippine Army Air Corps Flying School, organized in 1937, based at Sablan Airfield, now known as the Camp Emilio Aguinaldo at Quezon City. Prior to this, the Filipino pilots were trained in the United States. With a handful of personnel and meager facilities, the Philippine Army Air Corps Flying School trained a trickle of students who eventually formed the elite corps that produces the air heroes in the last war in 1939. After the World War II, the flying training operation resumed with the activation in 1948 of the Primary Flying School Squadron. It was under the command of Captain Horacio N. Parolan, stationed in Fernando Air Base, Lipa City. In 1951, the 102nd Pilot School Squadron in Florida Blanca was transferred to Fernando Air Base. And later, the 103rd School Squadron was activated to handle military and academic portions of the curriculum as well as the administration of the aviation cadets. On 01 August 1960, the three squadrons were organized as integral unit, the Philippine Air Force Flying School. Henceforth, the school was operated under the supervision of the school commandant who controlled the Department of Academics, Military, and Flying Training to implement the officer training program. In 1966, the first class of college graduates was sworn in as aviation cadets of the Philippine Air Force Flying School. The class graduated as members of Class 68 Alpha. From there, the Philippine Air Force Flying School continued to train military officers graduated from the Philippine Military Academy and the Philippine Air Force Officer Candidate School. The vision of the school is to become a professional, competent, and well-equipped flying school responsive to the needs of the Philippine Air Force. In line with the Philippine Air Force Flight Plan 2028, the school was reorganized and the 101st Primary Pilot Training Squadron was renamed as the 101st Pilot Training Squadron pursuant to General Order Number 333 dated 11 September 2017. Likewise, the 102nd Basic Pilot Training Squadron and the 103rd Student Squadron was renamed as the 102nd Pilot Training Squadron and the 103rd Pilot Training Squadron, respectively. The Philippine Air Force Flying School is now under the Air Education Training and Doctrine Command and is the only source of pilot that now composes the pilot corps of the Philippine Air Force.
Ang kasanayang magpalipad ng sasakyang panghimpapawid ay kinaklasipika bilang isang kakayahang teknikal. Upang maiwasan ang aberya sa pagpapalipad, ano nga ba ang ginagawang hakbang ng Philippine Air Force Flying School hinggil sa pagpili ng mga magiging dekalidad na piloto?
Ang pagpapalipad po ng eroplano is a very technical skill. Kaya nga po ang ating mga kandidato ay dumadaan sa very strict process ng pagpili. We want to make sure that these incoming students are not only qualified to be a pilot, but they are also capable of being a pilot. Dito po sa Philippine Air Force Flying School ay sinasala po namin mabuti ang ating mga nagiging estudyante mula sa mga hanay ng batang opisyal ng Philippine Air Force. Isa sa mga qualification ay dapat ikaw ay isang regular o reserve officer ng Philippine Air Force. Karamihan po sa mga nagiging estudyante namin ay mga graduate ng Philippine Military Academy, Philippine Air Force Officer Candidate School, at yung mga galing ng Foreign Service Academy. We have 3 major examinations during the selection process. First is the physical and medical examination, na kung saan tinitignan ang pangkalahatang kondisyon ng katawan, particularly sa mata, sa tenga, sa puso, asthma, o anumang sakit na makakaapekto sa kanilang training or sa pagpapalipad ng eroplano. Next po is yung physical fitness test, na kung saan ito ay isa sa mga standard na binibigay sa pagiging sundalo, lalo na sa pagiging piloto. Ang panghuli ay yung Military Pilot Aptitude Test or MPAT. Ito ay isang special examination na binibigay sa mga gustong magpiloto. Dito sinusukat ang iyong logical thinking, spatial disorientation, multitasking, memory, and mental arithmetic.
Sa ating pagbabalik, ating tunghayan kung ano nga ba ang mga pinagdadaan ng training ng mga piling student aviators sa kanilang ilang buwang pagsasanay sa loob ng Philippine Air Force Flying School.